I had a very unique experience that started with what I thought was nothing more than an amazing and vivid dream, but it turned out to be a premonition of something that actually happened almost a year later with my husband. I'll describe the dream first, then get into what happened afterward. In the beginning of the dream, I found myself standing in a forest at night, surrounded by the most breathtaking fall scenery. The leaves were so colorful, and I was standing on a gravel driveway looking at this beautiful modern A-frame house in the trees. It had huge floor-to-ceiling windows in the front, and it looked like a place I would never want to leave. As I was standing there, I saw 3 small gray beings come out from behind things outside the house like they had been hiding. They were all about the same size, probably a head shorter than me at 5'4", and the second they saw me looking at them, all 3 of them quickly slipped inside through the front door. This might sound like a scary scene to some people, but I had no fear of them. I was intensely curious actually, so I followed them into the house. I walked through the door and went toward the back of the house on the main floor where there was a kitchen and a bedroom. Then when I got back there, it was dark, and one of these beings slowly came out from around a corner and walked up to me while the other 2 stayed farther back in the bedroom. There was something so gentle about the way it came toward me that it put me completely at ease. No actual words were spoken, but I could fully sense it was just as curious about me as I was about them. Then it reached out its hand and I touched it. This connection gave me a flood of feelings and emotions, but I was also surprised at how large the hand was compared to the rest of its body, with 4 long fingers and no fingernails. I also noticed how soft its skin felt, and it reminded me exactly of what a horse's nose feels like. The part I will never forget though was that it was warm. That was very weird to me later on because I don't think I've ever noticed temperature in a dream before. Right after this, I partially crouched down so that we were at eye level looking directly at each other, and I remember asking in a telepathic way why they came here. Again, there were no words or sounds, I just understood the answer to that question immediately. They had come here purely out of curiosity. There was no complicated reason behind it and no other motive, they were just curious. Before I could even ask my next question, which was going to be, how did you get here? I got the answer, and I knew that whatever they had arrived in was behind the house. Along with that knowledge came a crystal clear mental image of where it was, and I saw a long, open, grassy area behind the cabin that looked like a landing site. I understood that they had chosen that random cabin because of this open space, and it wasn't any more complicated than that. My dream ended right there, and when I woke up, it felt like I was on a natural high full of emotions and endorphins. I have had countless vivid dreams over the years, and even some that I thought about for a while after waking up, but this one was so different that I don't even like to call it a dream. It was intensely with me for months, like I had actually met this other life form in reality. I couldn't stop thinking about touching its hand and making full eye contact with it. The whole experience was beautiful, and the level of mutual curiosity between us is difficult for me to even describe. It affected me so much that I told everyone close to me about it, like my husband and my mom and dad and some of my friends. I never once claimed it was a premonition or that I had actually been visited by alien beings. It was just an unusually meaningful and moving dream that left a major impression on me. About 9 months after this, in the fall of 2024, my husband surprised me with a short trip for our anniversary. He had booked 2 nights in a cabin up in Chesterville, Maine that was on 80 or 90 private acres, and he kept the entire thing a surprise until the day before we left. I didn't even know exactly where we were going when it was time to leave. We drove up during the day and got there just as it was getting dark. Then when we pulled into the actual property and saw the cabin for the first time, I was more in shock than I can ever remember being in my life. Sitting there in all of these colorful trees was a stunning modern A-frame house with huge windows. This was positively, without question, the cabin from my dreams. I really want to emphasize what I mean when I say that. It didn't remind me of the place or look similar. It was the cabin from my dream down to the smallest detail, and seeing it in person right in front of us left me speechless. When we got inside, it only got more unbelievable because the kitchen was the same and the view out the windows was the same. Even the fireplace and the color of the cabinets were the same. Every part of this home was in my dream, and it was like I had stepped into the Twilight Zone. In the morning after our first night, we started exploring a little around the house, and this was when I learned one more detail about the place that absolutely floored me. The cabin had these wooden walkways around it and this adorable hot tub in the trees that was heated with wood. But when we followed the walkway all the way back behind the house, it came to an end at a huge, long, flat area that was all grass, and this just happened to be the property's private airstrip. This pushed any slim chance of it being a coincidence right out the door. When I was interacting with the being in my dream, I had specifically been shown why they chose that location, and the image I saw was a long, flat, grassy area identical to this airstrip. And really, what are the odds that any other A-frame rental cabin anywhere has a private airstrip hidden in the trees like that? It has to be the only one. I actually get choked up when I talk about it because it's so unbelievable. Some people might think that my husband chose this place on purpose, but there's no way he could have done that, and he would have no reason to. He knew the minor details from hearing me talk about my dream almost a year earlier, but it would be impossible for him to find a real place that matched perfectly, especially when you add in the airstrip. Honestly, even if he had had one custom built from my description, it still wouldn't have been completely right. I also don't want to give the name or the exact location of this cabin because it's still an active rental property with wonderful owners, but my husband found this place online and booked it completely on his own. I had no input or involvement, and I didn't even know he was doing it. The rest of our stay there was amazing and relaxing and special to me on a level that I can't describe. I will admit that I was almost convinced 3 alien beings were going to make an appearance, but nothing like that happened. We never saw or heard anything unusual. We just had a wonderful time with each other in the woods. By no means do I think it was all meaningless, though. I have never even had the hint of a premonition about anything else, and none of my dreams have ever come true, much less one about a real place that actually exists. Because this was so recent, I still think about it a lot, and I wonder if I was shown something on purpose. One part of it has already come true, and that was the cabin, but I'm still young, so there's plenty of time for the rest of it to happen too. And if that's the case, I will be here to welcome it with wide open arms. I grew up in Bloomington, Indiana, and this happened when I was 14 years old. Specifically, we lived on Hart Strait Road, and our house sat back off of that with about a 100-foot driveway that connected the two. It also took place on a weeknight in the early fall, but I don't remember the date. We had just finished dinner and everyone was winding down for the night when my mom asked me to walk a letter out to the mailbox for her because it needed to go out the next morning. I didn't think anything of it and headed down the driveway to do what I was told. When I got to the mailbox, I put the letter in, and before I could even close the door, this rush of feelings came over me that was overwhelming. At 14, I didn't know what to call this because I'd never felt anything like it, but it was a pure euphoria. As an adult, I can say it was similar to getting morphine after surgery or some other kind of opiate painkiller. It was an extremely powerful total-body euphoric feeling, and I fell into this deeply calm state. I remember standing up straight again and looking around, and everything felt like it was in slow motion. Directly across the street from our house was this huge field, and when I turned in that direction, I saw a man standing right on the other side of the road from me. He said hello as soon as I looked at him, which I replied to by saying hi. Then he asked if he could borrow me for a minute because his truck had died in the field and he needed help pushing it. That was basically our whole conversation, and since I was always taught to help our neighbors anytime they needed it, on top of being in this altered mental state, I really didn't see anything wrong with the situation. But this is where everything stops making sense. I would never normally follow a complete stranger into a field at 10 o'clock at night, and I had never seen this man before. I also don't remember seeing his truck anywhere, but I still casually walked across the street toward him like it was normal. I guess I couldn't see the possible danger in what I was doing, or maybe I just didn't care. When I got across the road, I walked with him down the slight decline on the other side and we went head on into the field. After that, I can't tell you where we went or what I helped him with. I don't even remember seeing him again after that. I was just suddenly walking out of the field and coming back up to the road by myself. By then, this euphoria was wearing off and I could feel myself coming back to normal, although I was still dazed. I think I was trying to figure out how late it had gotten and hoping my parents weren't going to be too upset. When I got back to our side of the road, I passed the mailbox again and I realized I hadn't closed the door or lifted up the flag after putting my mom's mail inside. When I stopped to do that, something else happened in the field behind me, and that time I had a much clearer head. I heard and felt this gust of wind that had to be in the 20 to 30 mile per hour range, and when I turned around, there was a very defined disturbance out in the field about 150 feet from the road. Even though it was dark out, I could still see that something was going on out there, and it was violent enough to send dirt and other dry vegetation flying into the air. I thought it looked like a helicopter taking off, except there wasn't anything there. I was staring right at it and I could see no reason for what was happening. I could only see the effect it was having on the ground and feel the wind coming off of it. That wind was noticeably warm too, which I thought was odd because it was an otherwise cool night. The sight of this scared me pretty badly and it got me jogging up the driveway toward the house with only two things in mind. The first was that I needed to get my parents, and the second was that it felt like I had been outside for so long. I was wondering why at least one of my parents hadn't come out to look for me since so much time had gone by. As soon as I got in the house, I told my mom everything that had just happened. Then she cut me off and told my dad there was a man across the street and he walked right out the front door toward the road. I went over every detail with my mom and she definitely seemed worried, but I'm sure what I was saying made no sense to her. At the time, I didn't think about why my dad was going outside, but I later learned he was looking for the guy, thinking he tried to lure me away from the house. He never ended up finding anyone or seeing anything, and he even walked up and down the road looking for a broken down truck. My mom stayed in my room for a while with me that night since it had shaken me up, but by the next day, things were mostly back to normal again and nothing ever came of it. As far as my parents were concerned, someone had approached me down at the road and thankfully, whatever he was trying to do hadn't worked. There's another part of this that came to light while I was talking to my mom, and it's become a nagging detail that I've never been able to understand. In my mind, I was outside for a long time, walking to the mailbox, then crossing the road and following that man into the field. Then I could only guess that I helped him do something, but I have no memory of it, and after that I came all the way back. It all felt very slow and drawn out, like 30 to 45 minutes had gone by, but according to my mom, I was only gone for 2 to 3. We have gone over this more than once, and she says I was only outside for maybe a minute longer than it would normally take to walk to the mailbox and back. That'd be 3 minutes at the absolute most. Then I was walking back to the house and telling her this outrageous story. My parents have always looked at it as a concerning incident where some creep might have been trying to get me away from the house, and I understand why they think that, but they dismiss a lot of the other details. My dad thought that what I saw in the field afterward was the man leaving the scene in his truck, but I know that wasn't it, and I have never really been honest with them about what I think it was. I felt under the influence of something the entire time, and I know that changed my thinking and my behavior. I still know what I saw in the field though, and it was not a truck leaving the scene. I could swear it was something actually lifting off into the air even though I couldn't see it. When it comes to the man I interacted with, I really do feel like he was trying to lure me into the field for some reason, but I don't know where I went with him or what happened during that time. I've wondered for years if he even looked the way I remembered him because I wasn't in my right mind. Maybe he wasn't even a man and it was just what I needed to see in order to willingly follow. Basically what I'm saying is that I consider this to be a close encounter and possibly an abduction of sorts, although the short amount of time I was gone in reality doesn't really back that up. That man came out of nowhere, then left just as mysteriously, and when it was over I feel like he quite literally took off in something from that field. I can't prove anything beyond what I can remember, so frustratingly, I guess I'm just stuck with this experience that I can't explain. have an experience to share that happened during my childhood, but I didn't realize how weird it was until 20 years later. I'm from Ottawa, Kansas, and when this happened, I was just 10 years old. My parents had recently divorced and my dad moved out, so it was just my mom and me living in our house at that time. When I was that age, I was a very optimistic and happy kid. I really don't remember having any nightmares growing up except for one time, and it scared me so badly that I never forgot about it. In the nightmare, I was in my dark bedroom when this very disturbing and terrifying monster came in through my doorway. I called it a monster back then, but as I got older, I realized that what I had seen in my dream was a modern gray alien. It had this thin, spindly body and a large head with huge black eyes, and it got right up to my face. When I started screaming for my mom, it grabbed each side of my head with its hands, and it felt like my soul was being pulled out of my body. The second it did this, my perspective flipped, and I was looking at myself through the alien's eyes. I could see my own face screaming, and the two hands that were holding my head looked like my own. It was just like a body-switching scene out of a movie where I went from being myself and looking at this alien to then being the alien looking back at myself. This scared me so much that I ran out of my bedroom, down the hall, and into my mom's room. Then I jumped into her bed, got under the covers, and laid my head on her chest because she was lying flat on her back. One of the most disturbing things I remember about this is that she didn't move or comfort me or even put an arm around me, and this was deeply scary. But luckily it ended there and I woke up. In the morning, I was still in my own bed and not my mom's, so I always assumed that running into her room had just been part of the dream. Life went on afterward, and I don't think I ever had another bad dream like that, especially not one on that level. It became the one and only creepy nightmare I had as a kid, and I always remembered it. More than 2 decades in the future, when I was 32, I went on a weekend trip with my daughter, my mom, my Aunt Lisa, and her boyfriend at the time, who was a guy named Paul. While we were driving, we all got onto the subject of ghosts and haunted houses, and Paul told us a very convincing story about a house in his family that had a history of paranormal activity. It was just an interesting road trip conversation until my mom mentioned that she had had something happen to her shortly after she and my dad split up. I didn't know this, but according to her, she was woken up one night by an intense light outside of her bedroom window and a horrible low rumbling sound. She said it was like deep bass that overpowered all other sounds around her, including her own voice. She then sat up in bed only to have something force her down again onto her back with her arms pinned to her sides so she couldn't move. Her eyes could still look around though, and when she looked toward her doorway, she saw this thin figure enter her bedroom and quickly come to the side of her bed. She could only see its lower body, but felt the blankets being lifted up. Then something firmly pressed against the side of her, and there was a heavy weight on her chest. That was the end of her story, but she claimed it was the scariest thing that's ever happened to her, and she said it was unbelievably real. I guess my aunt already knew about this, but I had never heard it before. Lisa's boyfriend Paul immediately told her it sounded like a ghost or an evil spirit in the house, but my mom said it wasn't at all like that. She had always thought of it as either sleep paralysis or an abduction, and she told us that the figure she saw in her doorway was most definitely alien. As soon as my mom mentioned when this happened, I went straight to my childhood nightmare because they had both taken place at the exact same time. I told her about my nightmare and what I had seen coming into my room. Then I tried to explain the part about switching perspectives and running into her bedroom. I also told her the part where I laid my head on her chest while she was on her back and how scary it was that she wasn't moving or acknowledging me. We had just heard each other's stories for the first time and couldn't believe how closely they matched. My Aunt Lisa and Paul both had a front row seat for this revelation too, and it turned into the main subject for the rest of our drive. The part my mom remembered most was being pinned on her back while this alien figure came to the side of her bed and was holding her there. She even showed me where the pressure was, which was just to the left of her sternum. In my nightmare, that's exactly where I laid on her, and I not only remember the pressure of being against her, but I know that was after I had switched perspectives with this thing, like I was part of the alien she was seeing. We talked a lot on that trip, comparing our memories and trying to narrow down when it happened. Obviously, after that long, neither of us could remember an exact date, but based on when my parents divorced and when my dad moved out, we both agreed that our two experiences had to have happened at the same time, and we think they happened on the same night. This is where a lot of troubling and upsetting thoughts come in for me, because I can only remember one deeply scary nightmare throughout my entire childhood, and it's that one. The odds seem astronomically high that my mom would have an equally disturbing experience that matched mine at the same time. When we look at it now, it seems like my mom and I saw two different sides of the same event. And even stranger than that, while she saw it from her own point of view, I saw it from another perspective, like I temporarily became the thing that went into her room, or I at least experienced what it did to her, and that just sounds crazy. We still don't understand it, but we know something happened to us, and my Aunt Lisa is in total agreement after hearing both stories. I especially can't understand why I would have seen this through the eyes of whatever came into our house, though. That part makes no sense. If it was a close encounter that we had, I've definitely never heard of another one like it, and that's really the main reason I wanted to share this.